Hello, welcome to the Marshals Museum. I know a lot of times when I come on for our Friday Facebook Lives, I'm a whole lot cheerier about things. This particular one it's one of those things that as much as in the museum field, the whole thing that we want to do is tell stories. There's many stories that are here, and we're looking forward in the future to us having the ability and the honor that the Marshal Service has entrusted in us to tell these stories. But as with a lot of stories surrounding today, I know a lot of us have feelings about today, and it's a bunch of the stories that in some cases I really wish we didn't have to tell. But they help us move forwards. They help us continue on, not just as a nation, but for the Marshal Service as an organization. And they help in a lot of ways to help really do what the Marshals Museum is here for, and that is to tell us how we continue. Normally during these Facebook Lives, and you can go back and watch, we've been doing if you're new here, thank you for showing up. We've been doing the Facebook Lives since this past April, and I've had the honor and the privilege to be able to tell a lot of really great stories about things that the Marshal Service has done. And during those, you'll hear me talk about different ways that you can come and help out the Marshals Museum in order to help us take care of what it is that we do. I'm not going to do that today. I'm not going to tell you different things. I'll let you go to our webpage and find out other ways to help us, or you can go back and watch old copies of these videos, and you can find out how to help us. Or better yet, if you follow us on Facebook or on our other socials, come back next week and you'll hear more about the direct ways that you can help the museum. Today, I specifically want to talk about the Marshal Service. I'm going to talk about 9/11, and I want to talk about the materials that we have here and the way that we can talk about this. If you come back next week, you're going to see a whole different Dave than what you're going to see today. For a lot of us, like you can see, it's just a really tough subject. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it. And if there's anybody on here who is watching today, I know there's people who are current and former employees of the agency. I know there are family members of 4 specific individuals I'll be talking about a little bit later. If you have your memories that you want to talk about here, or if you want to talk to the museum later at some point about this, I know it's kind of rough today. Go ahead and by all means contact us through Facebook, contact us through any of our other socials. I had a shot in the dark yesterday from a deputy who's just an amazing trove of some of the images that you're going to see here. And I'm going to go ahead and switch over while I talk. I'm going to let a bunch of images that I have, I'm going to let those scroll through as I talk about some of the stuff that was going on today, just to help give you a little bit better idea of some of the subject matter and why this is so touching. And one of the questions we often get is like, are you a marshal? Were you a deputy? And it's like, I was never a deputy. A lot of us who are here at the Marshals Museum, we are not the Marshals Service. As I said, we get the privilege and the honor to tell their story. But we get enough contact with these folks to really get the understanding of what it is they deal with, and just we respect them. So I'm going to let some of these pictures do the talking, and while I tell some of the stories about what happened that day and in the months that continued from the Marshal Service. Much of this has been compiled by David Turk, the Marshal Service historian. He was on here a month or so ago talking about Billy the Kid. Much more fun subject topic than this. But we're going to go ahead and I'm going to dive into this, and I want to talk about some of the stories of what happened that day, and later I'm going to have images going in the background. I want to tell you right now, the images that are going to be happening, they are images of the Trade Center area following following the collapse, following 9/11, with the recovery efforts. You're going to see a lot of people covered in soot. I don't think anything is particularly bad, but I know some of us have strong reactions to seeing that site. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get over to that. Once I get done with what I want to say here about this, I want to talk about some of the objects we have here in our collection, specifically related to the Trade Center and to the Southern District of New York, the Marshal's office that's there in Manhattan. And then I want to talk about the 3 names currently on the wall behind me, and then the 4th name that's going to be added this next year. So let's go ahead and and these photographs, before I forget, I want to credit Bill Huffnagel, who retired from the Marshals Service. At the time that this was happening, he was with Technical Operations Group. I'll talk about the Technical Operations Group and Huffnagel a little bit later. Joe Kirch, he provided us with a bunch of these materials. And then Manuel Perry, he's a assistant chief deputy down in Florida right now. He was in Southern District of New York at that time. And a couple of the pictures that were in this batch from him that we just received, just shot yesterday. There are some really amazing stuff. So these are going to just randomly go through, and you may see them multiple times, depends on how long I chat here. If anybody has any questions at any time during the course of this, if you have anything that you want to say on the chat, go ahead and holler. If I miss it on the chat, I know that Casey is over in the other room. She's going to be kind of monitoring chat and kind of taking care of anything that needs to get taken care of there. But by all means, thanks for anybody who wants to stop in and take a look at the feed. And I'm going to go ahead and start reading what I want to talk about to help tell some of these stories. If I can just get my computer to do what I want it to do. Oh, let's turn that down. There we go. So some of the things that happened on the day of 9/11, some of the first responders to it. Obviously, you've got Port Authority, Fire Department of New York Police Department, Marshals. This is one account from Deputy U.S. Marshal John Spinos. He was a partner of Dominic Guadagnoli. You'll probably see the picture of Guadagnoli in this as it scrolls through. He's the Deputy U.S. Marshal carrying a woman in his arms. There's a photograph the AP took of that has since gained lots of miles. But John Spinos said, we parked a few blocks away and we rushed through the crowd down to the base of the towers. As we were getting to the area, the second plane struck. And that's how quickly they got down there. The Southern District of New York, their offices were only a few blocks away from the Trade Center. When that happened, he was knocked down by falling debris and had to navigate through the smoke. He lost track of his partner, Guadagnoli. He did find a New York Police Department officer who got him far enough away from the scene when the towers collapsed. The district office had already set up a search party in a triage location. He got there. The supervisor, Ralph Burnside, had grabbed Spinos and began performing triage, cleaning his wounds. And then there was so much dust and everything, it took him a while to finally realize that John Spinos was actually one of his subordinates. Spinos was amazed to see the guys putting themselves in danger just to come look for them. Granted, this is after he and Guadagnoli had put themselves into danger to go down to the Trade Center to help do what they could to rescue people. There were a number of people on site that day from Southern District of New York, and as well as what was going on in District of Columbia and elsewhere around the country as people started to realize something was going on. Over that day and afterwards, Southern District of New York, Special Operations Group, Investigative Services Division, Technical Operations Group, they started to do what they do best. They went to work doing the jobs that they were supposed to do. I know that I had the opportunity to visit Technical Operations Group a year and a half ago, and I can't talk about some of the stuff I saw there, but I had a chance to talk with Bill Huffnagel, and I got a chance to see some of what came up in the few months afterwards. Not only were they at the site of Ground Zero using different techniques and technology they had to try to identify where remains might be, as well as trying to identify the black boxes for the planes. They also spent the next couple of months, folks from Technical Operations Group, going through the phones that FBI had grabbed out of the Boston airport parking lot. They took those phones. They were able to use those phones to help to identify the people who were the co-conspirators on the attacks. There was a lot of information that was ready to get made public at that time, and then with the plea bargain, this was about to get released in order for the trial to go forwards on those people who were still alive, who were related to this. And as part of that, the phone network that they had used from here back to Germany to other places in Europe and in the Middle East, and they were able to trace that whole network and figure out what was going on, and that was going to be used at the trial. And then some plea deals were made at the trial, and the marshals just kind of held on to that information. We are expecting next year here at the Marshals Museum, regardless of what our status as a museum is, we plan to have a 20th anniversary retrospective on 9/11, and we expect that at that time not only will it be photographs like the ones you're seeing on your screen right now, we are also going to be showing any information that we can about those operations and investigations following 9/11. Other operations that were going on, Deputy U.S. Marshals Bill Snelson and Tex Lindsay, they were Eastern District of North Carolina. They started working with customs staff to secure the nation's airports. A lot of people don't realize that about a dozen airports on the East Coast were taken over by Deputy U.S. Marshals up and down the East Coast. Everything from Boston Logan Airport all the way down to Newark, New Jersey. And there were some others in there. The people who were placed in charge were Deputy U.S. Marshals and U.S. Marshals. They were the ones who were responsible for that security for a good month or so before they started bringing in other people to take over those operations. You could write a book just on that. Eastern Virginia's Michael Pio with a new K-9 named Beacon. He was assigned to the Pentagon in the days following 9/11. They sifted through wreckage there, and then they were assigned to airports. He recalls, I ran from the Pentagon to National to Dulles. And so he was just very, very busy going around securing the nation's borders. And because the agency's familiarity with air piracy, which I'll be doing at some point, I hope, either a Friday or a Marshals Myths for YouTube on the air piracy program, it was natural to turn to them into crisis, keeping in mind the U.S. Marshals are not Air Marshals. Air Marshals and the U.S. Marshals are two different organizations, and they always have been. Deputy U.S. Marshal, now Inspector Jeff Cahill, attended to the safety of judicial personnel and courthouse facilities in the Eastern District of Virginia. And that's another example. There were U.S. courts, effectively, in many U.S. judicial activities shut down for the day. Nobody knew who was, I say we, they didn't know what the next attack was going to be. Once it became obvious that it was a coordinated attack, was there a fourth plane, was there a fifth plane, was there a sixth plane? And of course the fourth plane was the one that ended up in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. There were lots of other concerns that day, and the Marshal Service acted the best way that they could as they needed to. And there's many reasons why they're often referred to as the Other Duties Agency. And these are some of the examples of why. Dave finishes up his write-up with, we changed a great deal after September 11th, 2001. However, the United States Marshals Service showed its mettle in and after crisis. As the oldest law enforcement agency nears its 225th year at that time, we're now 5 years on from when he wrote this, its personnel can remember these contributions to heal the shock and sadness. Justice, integrity, service can all be found there. And you'll see up on the wall behind me above the names of the 376 soon to be 377 men and women who are on this wall, Justice, Integrity, Service. I'm going to now start doing, there's a ton of other stories that we could get into more detail on. It's going to be a while before we'll be able to do that, because without more background information or more opportunity, and I think it kind of goes a little bit past what I would like to cover today, but there's going to be more stories over time that we will focus in on individual elements of 9/11 and other activities around the country. I am now going to talk about this piece right here. As soon as I can get that back up, I turn it off. There we go. There we are. See, it's never a Facebook Live without me screwing something up technologically. Let's see, which one was that? That was, this piece we have is a special piece in our collection. Following the demolition of the World Trade Center and the surrounding facilities that were too damaged to maintain, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, they owned the Trade Center. They started to go through a process of taking an architect. They went through the site and they picked out individual pieces they thought were distinctive. Investigators carted everything else away. Most of the wreckage from the site was scrapped or recycled. But the agency, Port Authority, they saved about half of 1% of the total volume. And I know you can see a number of these pieces around the country, but they took all of these pieces right now, at that time, and they put it in JFK, in Hangar 17. It was an 80,000 square foot empty hangar that was there that had previously belonged to Tower Air. They moved those pieces of metal there, and then they started processing through those in order to help produce memorials for around the country. They had more than 2,600 artifacts have gone to more than 1,585 fire and police departments, schools and museums, other nonprofit organizations in every state and at least 8 other countries. Each recipient has pledged to use them in memorials or exhibits honoring those killed on 9/11. And this piece that you see is a chunk of I-beam that we have that we received in 2012 as part of that program. We received it from the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and based on the records that we have from them regarding this piece, it is one piece of a much longer I-beam that was cut into sections about 12 or 14 inches in width across that. And I've seen since then there are a number of pieces in most major metropolitan areas. Depending on where you live in the country, there's probably one within a half hour or hour's drive of where you live, depending on where you're at. I know I used to live in some of the flyover states, and it's hard sometimes to get to some of those pieces. I've seen them outside, I've seen them in public art projects, I've seen them used inside in museums, I've seen them used as architectural pieces within other buildings. It's a neat piece. To help describe this, and I know that I've talked before about being the curator here and trying to help tell stories, but I also want to make sure that the materials, my first and foremost job in the Marshals Museum is to protect our collection, to protect the stuff that you see in museums. As part of that job, the easiest way to protect materials is to not touch them. You keep the air and the humidity fine, like the temperature and the humidity straight and level at a good point. You keep your hands off the stuff, and everything tends to be taken care of by itself, just environmentally. And this is one of 2 pieces that I fully and happily allow people to put their hands on. And you'll see right at the base of it, there's a label, and I want to read that label to you right now. The story of September 11th, 2001 needs no retelling. The effects of that day are still being felt, especially among the first responders and others who performed recovery and investigative operations at Ground Zero and other facilities. Since 9/11, law enforcement officers from at least 10 agencies have died due to illnesses related to these attacks. Among them have been Marshals Service employees. Additional losses are expected in the future. Please feel free to touch this piece of history. And as I suggest, that is a piece that I have no qualms about people touching. Anytime someone comes to the building, if they come into the Hall of Honor, into this space that we're in, I want to make sure that they get an opportunity to know what this is, and especially if I get the sense that they recognize if I get the sense that they recognize the importance of 9/11, if they have memories about that subject. Everybody tends to be touched as much as the object is touched. Just the whole concept of a piece like this in a museum, I think, brings much more weight to the subject matter that we're talking about, and it helps make the whole idea of history literally much more tangible. I'm going to show you the other piece that I allow people to touch. It's very similar. I'm going to switch fully over to that particular camera, and I'm going to go handle that while I direct to the other subject. And audio should still be just fine. If it's not fine, you let me know. I'm going to be just standing on the other side of it. The other pieces I want to show here, get the camera just right. These are pieces that the Marshals Museum received just before Christmas of 2019. They are from a donation made from the U.S. Marshals Service, Southern District of New York. That is essentially the island of Manhattan. And that was a district in which all of this occurred. The particular gift was given to us by Michael Greco, United States Marshal for the Southern District of New York. From his quote that day, as a former New York State Police officer and first responder on 9/11, these pieces capture the courage of the U.S. Marshals who put their lives on the line to protect our country. We're proud to share these items with the United States Marshals Museum so people from all over the world can reflect on these brave individuals' actions. And what you see in front of you, from right to left, there's an American flag that was flown at the World Trade Center site on September 24th, 2019, so just almost a year ago, for the 230th anniversary of the United States Marshals Service. The frame in the middle is the signed copy of the picture Cathedral, a famous photograph of the south wall of the World Trade Center after the attack. That photograph became well known by a number of people. The photographer was a fireman from New York, and he took that and then presented it to the Marshals Service, Southern District of New York. And then the shadow box on the left is a collection of photographs of the United States Marshals Service response. And you see foremost among those, I'm going to zoom in on that one just so you can get a really good shot of it. That's Deputy Guadagnoli carrying the woman away from the wreckage, well, from the attack. And so Marshal Greco presented those himself last year to the Marshals Museum so we could help use these to help better tell the story. The piece that is on the table is another piece of the World Trade Center. So we actually have two pieces of the World Trade Center here in Fort Smith. Whereas the larger piece is a full piece of I-beam. This one was just a single chunk of 3/4 inch steel, about 14 inches by 14 inches. That was given, I don't know if it was through the Port Authority program or how they received it, but the Fire Department of New York received that particular piece of steel. They then presented it to the Marshals Service, Southern District of New York, Southern District of New York decided that we would be a good place to have that piece. So they then presented it to us. The plans for the Marshals Museum and that piece of steel is we are going to take it, we're looking in the future at a point in the future, we're going to have it mounted in, the idea and the desire is to have it mounted in an armature that we can make easily transportable so we can take it to public events, schools, and other programs. So we can get that piece to travel outside of the building to help tell these stories. So that's some of the stuff that we're looking at in the future to help tell these stories. But whereas that one's going to be traveling, the big piece of I-beam that you saw earlier, it is it's there. That piece is going to stay there in place. We don't have any current plans to move it. And it's so stationary, I could climb up on that thing, it's not going to go anywhere. So we are very happy to have that, both of those pieces here to help us better tell this story. Which leads me to, I'm going to go back to this camera view to talk about the names of the people here on this wall. These 376 names, all men, and soon to be 377 men, 375 men and 2 women. They are all people who gave their lives in the line of duty to the Marshals Service. They are people who willingly did the job that they were asked to do, and they gave their lives in doing so. The people specifically I want to mention right now, 3 of them are currently on the wall, and I'm going to share images of them. 3 of them are on the wall. 1 of them will be added to the wall very likely next year. Von Troy Aiken. On September 11th, 2001, Von Aiken was working as a support specialist for the United States Marshals Service in the Southern District of New York. When the 2 towers of the World Trade Center collapsed, Aiken was assigned as part of the cleanup crew, identifying body parts found in the rubble. 16 years later, following many successful years of continued service to the U.S. Marshals Service, Aiken was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. This cancer was determined by the World Trade Center Health Program to be a direct result of his work with the collapsed buildings. On September 3rd, 2018, Aiken passed away from the cancer. Von Troy Aiken is the only non-law enforcement person on this wall, or the only person who is serving in a non-law enforcement capacity for the Marshals. The second person I'm going to mention, and I hope his daughter had a chance to get on here, she mentioned on our Instagram post. She was happy that we were mentioning this today. Kenneth Doyle. He was a Deputy U.S. Marshal stationed at the Southern District of New York in New York City. And September 11th, 2001, Doyle was one of the deputies who responded to the emergency along with New York firefighter, police officers, and emergency medical crews to perform rescue and body recovery duties from the wreckage of the World Trade Center's 2 towers. Doyle was later diagnosed with cancer caused by working in the pile and the toxins that were present there. Deputy U.S. Marshal Kenneth Doyle died on July 26, 2017. He was survived by his wife of 30 years, Carolyn, and their 4 children. Megan, thanks for showing up. And I'm sorry for your death. Zacharias Faltaone, I didn't switch to, there's the photograph we have of Kenneth Doyle. The next one, the next 2 I'm going to have are photographs that have not been seen by public before. We don't have them on our computers yet. The reason why is I just received them yesterday. They are for Zach Toro and for Betty Pascarella. If I've got 2 pictures that I know that Zacharias Toro was in that were received yesterday, and if he has, and Megan, I'm so glad I was able to help you with this today. Zacharias Toro and the photographs I have is Zacharias Toro and Betty Pasquarella were both sent to me by Deputy Perry in Florida. And so if I picked the wrong photograph, please somebody correct me, because I have another photograph that I could grab in a minute here. But Zacharias Spalto Toro Jr. Zach Toro joined the United States Marshals Service for the Southern District of New York in August 2000. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, Toro was assigned to 500 Pearl Street in Lower Manhattan when two planes hijacked by Al-Qaeda terrorists struck the World Trade Center Twin Towers. After the towers collapsed, he and other Marshals personnel were dispatched to the scene for search and rescue efforts. He then was detailed to provide security to members of the Federal Emergency Management Agency working at the site. He went on to be promoted from detention enforcement officer to deputy U.S. Marshal and served in California and Arizona. Unfortunately, like many other rescue personnel, he developed cancer years after the attack. And the next one I'm going to show is, can't really make her out. Oh, and here I just realized I've been flipping through these pictures on my desk and I have not been showing them here. So this is Von Troy Aiken, one of a number of pictures we have. And if you are a descendant or a family member of any of these individuals or anyone else from the Hall of Honor, if you have photographs that you would like to share with us or more information or stories you would like to share with us regarding these individuals, whether it's 9/11 or some other case, please feel free to contact us. We are more than happy to help support the family members. Von Troy Aiken. Here is Kenneth Doyle. And I'm sorry, I'm reading the comments in the sidebar here. That's really good stuff. And again, if anybody has memories of 9/11 that they want to share, if you don't feel like you want to share it here in the comment thread, please, by all means, feel free to contact us here at the museum. We want to hear your stories. We want to help do what we can to help tell the stories of the Marshals Service and the men and women who served. As you've heard me say before, as Al Butler once said, you put on the badge, you do the job. And it's not always an easy job, and it's not always a job you want to do. And this is the picture I have of Zacharias Toro. Mrs. Doyle, thank you for commenting and watching. And again, if there's anything that we can do to help any of the family members that we can do here, we are more than happy to come in and do what we can. This is one of just a couple of pictures that I have that would have Betty Pasquarella. There's a number of pictures you can find online for her, but none of them show her as a deputy. Betty Pasquarella, at the right side of this image, there's a deputy in the foreground with a yellow helmet looking away. There's a woman past him sitting down. That's Betty Pasquarella. That's her at the site of the World Trade Center. Born in 1960, Betty Pasquarella passed away on April 6, 2020 due to a 9/11 related illness. A lifelong resident of New Dorp, Staten Island, she got her bachelor's degree from St. John's University in Queens, New York. After a career as a deputy U.S. Marshal, she retired, became a volunteer EMT with the North Shore Rescue Squad. She served New York City in many ways, always looking for the well-being of human and animal kind. She was a fitness enthusiast. She enjoyed hiking, yoga, and running marathons. That was actually one of the ways that when I started searching for more information on her, one of the references I found was at the age of 57, so just a few years ago, she was running a 4-mile charity race. And I'm thinking I can barely run from the couch to the fridge. It just always impresses me. Betty Ann is survived by her two sisters, Grace and Margaret. 2 brothers, William and Joseph, her sister-in-law, Josephine, many loving nieces and nephews, great nieces, great nephews, and cousins. Related to Betty Ann, the Marshal Service has submitted her name to the National Law Enforcement Memorial for national recognition on the wall. I'm going to go ahead and come back to this view. For the history of that, every law enforcement officer, if you just Google National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, every law enforcement officer who's been lost in the line of duty, who can be verified, that information goes to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Foundation, and that's in Washington, D.C. They have a large monument there just off from where the National Police Museum is, the National Law Enforcement Officers Museum is. And really, it's something else. Knowing that more than 250 of these names on the wall, close to 300 of these names on the wall are listed there on that monument. We're getting closer and closer to getting all 376 of our names here. We'll get there someday. Right now, we are just continuing to do what we can to tell this story. As I mentioned earlier and a couple other times, this is not a story we wish we had to tell, but it's a story that needs to be told. And these are important people who took part in important events. They did what they could to help take care of those around them and to do their job. And I think in a lot of ways, as much as I try to, in many of these Facebook Lives, I try to be up, I try to be cheery, I try to tell all of this great stuff. There's elements of this that I can't help but be struck by the humanity of it, and just the importance of these small acts by people, especially knowing that the 3 names currently on the wall, the 4th name, which we'll be likely adding this next year, and we know that there are those in the future. I've commented before here and elsewhere that 8 of the names on this wall behind me are from the deadliest day in Marshal Service history. That was the tragedy at Going Snake, just about an hour and a half from here, over in what's now Oklahoma. The deadliest day of the Marshal Service, a deputy marshal and 7 posse members killed in the same day. Someday 9/11's going to overtake that, and I'm not looking forward to that day. But thank you for those of you who have come in today and watched. Thanks to those of you who've put on the badge and taken that oath to do the job, as long as you have that badge on. For a lot of us here at the Marshals Museum, it sounds almost out of like we're trying too hard sometimes to tell some of these stories, when there really are some amazing stories out there, and the ability of us to tell those can only be aided by the ability of other people to tell us those stories. The more we know, the more we can tell others. And we're just glad and we're very fortunate to be able to tell a lot of those stories right now about people who are still with us, who are still able to tell those stories. And when it comes down to it, as long as we tell those stories, the people who are up on this wall will never be gone. A lot of us have dealt with loss in our past. A lot of us have dealt with missing people and losing people for different reasons. And most of the names on this wall are people who we still recognize and we still know, specifically because people wanted their stories told, and we want to continue to tell those stories. Thank you to everybody who showed up. I know we have a few folks who have regularly showed up. I know Kenneth Doyle's family showed up. Thank you for coming in. Anything that we can do to help you, we're here for you as much as the Marshal Service is. If there's anything that anybody else can add to these stories or the other stories that we have for the Marshal Service, by all means, please feel free to give us a shout, either through our Facebook page, Instagram, we're on Twitter. Just email us through our main webpage. If it's something to do with history and telling the stories, or reminders or materials, by all means, please feel free to contact us. We want to help get those stories told. If we don't know the story, we can't tell it. Thank you very much. I hope everybody has a safe and healthy Friday. Have a good, safe weekend. Take care of yourselves, take care of those around you, and like I said, continue to tell stories. Thanks a lot. You guys have a wonderful day.